So
No, you're good. It was something
that was scary.
a setting that somehow accidentally. Someone must have touched the camera when I wasn't looking. I don't know.
Fine.
Just give it a clap.
Okay. Okay. We find ourselves, Baruch Hashem, very soon approaching the very exciting Yom HaMishta, Yom HaSimcha, Yom HaGadol, Yom HaKadosh, that we all know as Purim. Right, the Bahag's Lashon in Siman Yud Tes, the Bahag says about Purim, Adif Yom Purim ki Yom Sheditna by Torah. The Purim is so chashuv, it's like the day that we were makabel of Torah. Right, we know Kimu v'Kiblu, that's the he's referencing there. Everyone knows the Lashon of the Zohar, and also it's brought in Arizal, that he says the famous Yom Kippur is Yom Kippurim, that Yom Kippur is only as great, it's Yom Kippur, Halavai, it sounds like it's not even as great as Purim. The Purim's even greater than Yom Kippur. And then there's the Yalkut Shemaini in Mishlei that says that in the future, all the Moedim, Kol HaMoedim Asidim Libatel, that in the future, all the Moedim are going to be gone, except, we all know, Yemei HaPurim, Einon B'Teilim Olam. Yemei Purim will always be here with us. So the question is, what's the pshat? Why is Purim so unique and so special that we say that Yom Kippur's not even as great, that it's going to be the one that stays on afterwards? It's like Yom Shedin the B'Torah. What's the chashivas of Purim? What is it? Besides for being that's very fun, but what's the main message? Why is Purim so chashiv? And the Chayr, you could ask that how can you even compare it to Yom Kippur? They're just so different. Yom Kippur, we have the Chameshas Inuyim, where we fast. We're like malachim. We stay away from everything physical for that one day, and then and Purim is fakir. We have Dalit things that we have a chiyuv of Michael Mishdeh, of a Suda, of course the drink, and the question is like, how do you even compare the two? And another question is, why is Purim Dafka going to be the one to stay on after Lasa Lava? Why is Purim Dafka the one that's Muchad, that we're going to keep that in Zman Mashiach? So Misham will come back to that. There's a great story. My Mori V'Rabbi, Reb Ephraim Shapiro, I don't know if anyone's heard of him from Miami. Just looking around here, and no one raise your hand if you remember, heard of Ephraim Shapiro. Okay, so that counts. Okay, if he watches this, I'm sorry that it just happens. Happens he's a pretty well-known speaker, and comes to Johannesburg sometimes over there. Comes down with him. Okay, Kitzer, he was once on a flight, and he was being flown in to speak from Miami to be flown in to speak in Philadelphia. Okay, he's done this flight many, many times. He gets on the plane. He's on the plane, and he said, he was sitting, he wasn't trying to show off where he was sitting, but he happened to be sitting in the front row, which is important for the story. And he's sitting directly across from the flight attendant. When they sit down before the flight lands, they always sit down and they buckle their seats in that, that seat that folds. And about 20 minutes before landing, she goes through the classic that we've all heard so many times, where she says, the light has been, the pilot has now, what's it called? The pilot has now shown that we are about to start initial descent. Please make sure that your all your carry-ons are stowed under the seat in front of you. Make sure that your seat is in the upright position. That your table tray, the whole thing we've all heard. And then she says, "We really thank you for flying with us. We hope you enjoy. Your flight as we now are about to land into." And she goes blink. And she goes, "2." And then she goes, "Rabbi, where are we flying to again?" And he's like, "Philadelphia, I hope." And she goes, "Yes, to Philadelphia International Airport. Thank you so much. I hope you had a great flight." Adkan was the mice. And now he said he was like so shocked that she forgot. And she said to him, she's like, "Rabbi, thanks so much." She's like, "I'm flying all the time, this place, that place. We forget sometimes where we're going." He said, when he heard that, it was such a Musar Haskell, because he said, he was so shocked that she, who was on this flight, didn't know where she was going. Yet he's like, we live our lives so often where we don't know where we're going. We don't know where we're headed. We forget where we're trying to get to. And that's with our life. And yet, when she was on this flight, it was like so shocking that how does she not know where we're flying to? So why does it happen? How does it happen that we're sometimes not sure where we're headed in life? We're just kind of living life, by route and not really thinking about it. And sometimes you even have something interesting. Sometimes you'll have where you actually are thinking about it. You know where you want to be, and you are thinking about where you want to get to, but we just don't get there. We don't actually get to where we want to be. So the question is, how does that happen? Why is that? So the pshat is, there's a lot of different pshatim in this, but the pshat is, the main thing is that we have barriers. We have things that inhibit us from taking the next step to where we want to be. There's things that block us. Very often it could be, our heart tells us one thing, but our seichel tells us something else. Our heart really wants us to do something, but our seichel says, you can't do it. What are people going to think about you if you do this? Or if you take on if you take on a certain chumrah with whatever it could be, a person you're afraid. What are people going to think? And there's things that stop us. If people are going to view me like that, or all these different things that stop us from being who we want to be. So on Purim, one of the incredible things of the gift of Purim is that it's the one time where we can see clearly, the one day that we're able to see clearly, who am I? Like, who do I want to be? Again, if it's done in the right way. If Purim is done in the right way, you can mamish tap into who do I want to be without thinking at all or caring at all what anyone else thinks. You can ask yourself, on Purim we can see, what do I want for my life? Where do I want to be in a year from now? Where do I want to be in 10 years from now? And at that moment, when you have that clarity, you're able to think and not have to be worried about what anyone else is cheshboning. You could take on Kabbalah in learning. You can take on a Kabbalah in Kedusha and Tefillah. So many different things that can be taken on. And we're not worried at that point. It's just you and Hashem. You're not worrying about what anyone else is thinking. So when we go to the famous Gemara that everyone talks about when it comes to Purim, when we talk about Mechayit Inish L'Sumi, Ad Yada, Bein Arham L'Baruch Mordechai. So sometimes you'll hear a person say, sometimes people don't understand. They don't understand. What's shot? This is so anti-Yiddishkeit. We're always people use our brain. We're always people thinking with our intellect. How could it be that there's any chiyuv like that? It must be. Sometimes people try to write it off. It never really happened. It's in the Gemara. It's in the Shulchan Aruch. Okay, I'm not getting to the Ayin Sham Mishabrun or whatever. But I'm just saying that it is taka, a real thing out there. And yet, some people they don't understand it. They don't connect with it. It goes against Yiddishkeit. And the pshat is, Betzim, they're right. Betzim, it's true. That for 364 days, or whatever you want, how many days are in the Jewish calendar, our seichel is what we pride ourselves on. Our seichel is what is going to be is what we always pride ourselves on. That is what makes us who we are. We, more than any other people out there, are always thinking and trying to learn and go weiter. But there's one day where we also say, take a step back. And we tell our seichel we put it on hold. Kilu. Because sometimes there's something very chashuv about what's in our heart. And if we don't tap into that for that one day to realize what we want to be, and we're always thinking constantly on seichel, sometimes we won't let ourselves even get to the level we're trying to get to. I heard a Maisa, I'll try another Rav, see if anyone here knows him. There's a Rav named Rav Eitan Feiner. No? Okay, I'll tell him not to look at this one either. So, Feiner is a big Rav in New York, no? Okay, I can't summon. Heard the name. In Farakaway. Maybe the Sats know from Farakaway about Refiner. Okay. Anyways. Okay, good. One of the Rav here does know who you are. Anyways, so Rav Eitan Feiner is the Rav of a shul over there and has a very chashuv of a person. And he once shared, I heard him saying actually on a podcast, it may not have been the In the Valley of Giants podcast, but it's also a Halavai for Halavai, you should get onto that one too. But he was on another podcast which had a little different number of viewers on that one. Anyways, he said on it that he talked about what made him go into Rabbanus and Mamish be moist nefesh for his whole life, really for Klal Yisrael. And he said a very interesting thing. He said he was in yeshiva. I think he actually said it was Keren B'Yavneh, and it was his first Purim there. And he said he had never ever drank before that, and his plan was always to go to KY for a year and go back and become a lawyer. That was like his dream. That's what he had set. And he said that Purim, he had a little bit to drink for the first time in his life, and he said he remembers lying on like an open mountain over there, open, and I guess in Yavna, or if whoever's ever been there can maybe picture it. And he said he was looking up to the sky, and he just had his conversation with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. And it was the most real conversation he ever had, where he was just telling Kodesh Baruch Hu at that point, he said he was makabel, that he wants to be meiser, he wants to be meiser himself, to give himself over to Klal Yisrael, and to be there for Klal Yisrael. He said if he didn't have that Purim, if he didn't have that moment, he never would have become who he is. I want to quote here the sefer called Chemdas Hayamim, who talks about the chashivas of Purim, specifically when it comes to the drinking on Purim. He says, "Ve'ez mivchanhu hayoim ma'u pnimiusai." This is a test to see what are you, what is your pnimius, what is your internal, who are you? V'chayiv adam l'vsimi puraya ad yada shemizgale mahu. You'll find out who you are. And he says, "Ube'ez simchas Purim kisheyizker HaTorah." If a person at that moment, when he's having simchas Purim, he's thinking about Torah or thinks about Yiddishkeit, so he says it's a simin she'avasa kishura b'nafshay, that it shows that he has that ava, it's kosher to his nefesh, it's in him, that's who he is. And chas v'shalom, he says, if you forget anything about Kodesh Baruch Hu, and that simcha leads to lo yaleinu, a totally different type of person. Unfortunately, that does happen. Not here in Yedid Melech. Simin she'enu oyev HaTorah, he doesn't really love Torah. Ve'eno sameach ba rak p'miyusa kosher l'schoik v'havalim. That means his internals are really just connected to schok and hevel. Ubi Purim is gal and ma'u. And Purim is when we come out, we realize who we are. So, with this aside, I saw Rav Moshe Sternbach wants to answer up the questions that we asked in the beginning. In what way is this greater? How could this be greater than Yom Kippur? How do we compare the two? And why is this going to be the one Yom Tov that stays on afterwards? Because when it comes to Yom Kippur, it's a day full of yira. You're mamish davening for your life, and we take on a lot of things, kabbalas, and we're afraid for the whole time. And he says, it comes an hour after Yom Kippur, and you're like, okay, you made it through, like you davened, and like kind of like ease back into yourself who you were, and basically that whole intense moment from before is kind of gone. But Purim says a day full of ava. The whole, it's the pnimius. There's nothing to change. There's nothing. It wasn't anything else other than this is who you are. Purim is showing exactly who you are. That internal is actually who you are. What comes out. There's nothing that's real, and it's done with ava. That's something which lasts. And part of Purim is really to tap into at that moment when you're really feeling you're able to connect in a real way. That's a time to be makabel something, to take upon something. It's a day of kimu v'kiblu. It's a day of kabbalas. It's a day of, aside from being extremely fun and geshmak, but it's also a day of really taking on something to change your life. In terms of, even the whole Megillah, I heard saw Chazal, it says Megillas Esther or Megillas Hester. It's being Megal the Hester, the hidden. You're Megal what's hidden inside you, trying to find out who am I. And sometimes, in a beautiful way, you can be shocked to find out who you are. You didn't realize, I actually really do. Learning is really inside me, and I really do want that. And if it happens the other way, it's something to work on. You're not done. But a person needs to daven. I saw the Ramban, very chashuv Ramban. The Ramban says that when it comes to Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, this Rosh Hashanah is a day he describes as rachamim b'din. It's a day mainly din with some rachamim. Yom Kippur is din b'rachamim. It's mainly rachamim with some din. But he says Purim is kulei rachamim. Purim is only rachamim from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kulei rachamim. And I saw from different Svarim that they write that this applies to all 3 days. This applies to Tainus Esther. Has this category Kulei Rachamim, Yudalit, and Tesvav. All 3 of these days have this mila of being Kulei Rachamim. It's a day of tefillah, a day to be makabel, a day to daven to Kadosh Baruch Hu and reach out. As we know that the Chazal tell us Kol Pesach Yad Noisim Lai, and that also applies to tefillah. You reach out to Kadosh Baruch Hu and Hashem is going to answer your tefillas. So my bracha to all of us is that we should be like to have a tremendous Simchas Purim, and to grow weiter and weiter from it, and to be a Purim that you mamish look back and you say, see how much you actually were makabel and grew from it.